Today on The Young and the Restless, Jack and Diane explain their plan, Faith and Mariah find out Sharon confessed, and Daniel puts the pieces together regarding Phyllis' accident. All products and services featured are independently chosen by editors. However, Soaps.com may receive a commission on orders placed through its retail links, and the retailer may receive certain auditable data for accounting purposes. At the Abbott house, Diane tells Kyle that their war was a ruse. Kyle protests. They've been arguing for weeks. Jack confirms it was all just a show. We did this all for you, son. It was an act to save you. Jack asks Claire to give them some privacy, but Kyle says she can stay. Claire decides she should go upstairs and check on Harrison. Kyle fumes, save me. From what? Jack and Diane say Victor and himself. Kyle says he can handle himself with Victor. They saw how deep Victor was getting his claws into him, and they didn't want that. Diane says he was only using him to hurt his father. They tried to warn him, but he wouldn't listen, so they took extreme measures to open his eyes to the truth. Kyle says the truth is that he thought their marriage was over. He was ready to write his mother off, and they said terrible things to each other. This was for my benefit. Jack and Diane hated it. She says it broke her heart to be so awful to Kyle. Elena joins Summer and Daniel at Phyllis' hospital bed and tells them she's stable, but she isn't responding. A neurologist is on the way. She'll let them know as soon as results from her tests come in. She assures them she's in good hands and leaves. Daniel and Summer discuss Nick saying their mother had been run off the road. Daniel wonders what if this wasn't an accident. Summer can't think about that right now. Chance comes in and asks for an update. Summer asks where her dad went. Chance isn't sure. He should be there by now. He tells them when they got there, Phyllis' car was on fire. There were tire marks indicating someone swerved into her lane. Summer asks about the other car. Chance says they must not have stopped. Daniel says, so it was intentional. At Sharon's house, she asks Nick again if he wants to call Chance. He doesn't respond. She thinks he hates her now and pleads with him to respond. She has to face up to what she's done. She can't live with the guilt and fear any longer. Sharon sobs. She knows this will probably destroy them, but she can't live this way anymore. I swear, I never meant to do any of these things. Heather's death was an accident. She cries that she panicked and shouldn't have tried to cover it up. She didn't know what else to do. Sharon tells Nick she's been sick inside ever since. There were so many times she wanted to let it out, but Cameron would warn her of the consequences. She asks him to believe her that she covered this up, not for herself, but for their kids, knowing what it would do to them to find out their mother killed an innocent woman. That thought stopped her until tonight. Tonight she almost killed Phyllis. I cannot live with this guilt inside of me anymore, so I told you. She asks him to call Chance for her so she can finally put this to rest once and for all. Nick takes her phone from her hand. Sharon cries that she has one favor to ask. Would you stay with me when Chance puts me under arrest? Nick says, Sharon, I'm sorry, but I do not believe that you did the things you've confessed to. The woman I know would never intentionally hurt anyone. Sharon says she did do those things. All of them. He asks if she's absolutely sure. What if her medication is causing her mind to play tricks on her? Sharon can't let Daniel suffer any longer. She planted the evidence in his apartment. So many times he came to her looking for the truth, and she blamed it on Phyllis for poisoning his mind. Look at her now. She's unconscious in a hospital. Everyone thought she was crazy. You, Chance, and her kids, and everything Phyllis accused me of is true. Nick protests, no, he's really struggling with this. Sharon apologizes for putting him through this. She sobs that Daniel had to send his daughter away because of her, and worse, he's being accused of murdering the woman he loved. She has to right this unforgivable wrong. You can't argue with that, can you? In Phyllis' hospital room, Chance says they don't know if this was intentional. The other driver may have panicked and drove off. Daniel notes this was by Sharon's house. Elena appears and says they're coming to take Phyllis for a CT scan. Summer and Daniel speak to their mother and ask for a sign that she can hear them. At the Abbott mansion, Jack and Diane tell Kyle how difficult their ruse was to keep up. Kyle says all the times Diane lashed out at him seemed to come pretty naturally. She says he gave it back pretty good, and he wasn't pretending. Kyle points out she had him convinced she had only come back for power and money. Bravo. She brought back all of the feelings from the first time she betrayed him. when she fired him from Jabut, or when he found out she was alive after pretending to be dead. Diane cries that she'll live with regret for the rest of her life. He says, "You and me both." Diane and Jack tell him he'd gotten cocky at Jabut, so she fired him. Jack says when they found out he was mixed up with Victor, they had to save him from his corrupt influence. Kyle doesn't see how putting him on an emotional roller coaster was saving him. Jack and Diane explain that he wouldn't listen to them. They needed Victor to take the bait so he would fire Kyle and hire Diane as CEO. Kyle points out he didn't take the bait. He told him. Diane kept it up until he gave her one last hoop to jump through. "He promised to give me glissade if I fired you on the spot right there at Abby's wedding." Jack tells Kyle that Victor didn't want him to succeed. He didn't even care about glissade, no matter how hard he'd worked on it. Kyle asks if they expect him to believe he invested in a company just to watch it fail. Jack says he wanted to watch Kyle fail and make him lose his son. This was all about Victor's insatiable need to pay him back. Kyle asks why they let it go on so long and put him through another firing, in public. Jack says they had to take it to the limit to force Victor's hand. Diane says the only way to save him was to let him fail. Jack is thankful that he's out from under Victor's thumb. "He can never hurt you again, Kyle." Kyle is going to need some time to process this. Diane reiterates that they did this to protect him. Kyle asks, "What if your grand plan didn't work? Victor's unpredictable, this could have backfired. How far would you have been willing to go to maintain your big lie? Would you have been willing to actually lose everything?" Diane says she was prepared to sacrifice everything to save Kyle from Victor. Kyle muses that she's the protective mother again. What happened to wanting it all? Diane says there's some truth to that, but for him, she'd give it all away if she had to. "We love you." Jack hopes with time he'll realize they did this for the right reasons. Claire reappears and Kyle tells her, "Perfect timing, let's get out of here." At Sharon's place, Nick agrees this can't go on any longer. It's not fair to Daniel and Lucy. Sharon asks him to call Chance for her. She can't do it without breaking down. Nick pulls out his phone and makes the call. Chance answers and asks where the hell he is. Nick asks for an update on Phyllis. Chance says she's still unconscious. Nick asks about Daniel and Summer. Chance says Daniel is holding it together and Summer's asking for him. Nick tells him he's at Sharon's and they have a situation there. He needs to come out right now. Chance says he's on his way. Nick disconnects. Faith comes in and notices Sharon's been crying. "Mom, what is it?" At the hospital, Chance tells Summer and Daniel that Nick called and he has to go meet him. Daniel asks if this is about Sharon. Chance doesn't have specifics and cautions against jumping to conclusions. After he walks off, Daniel asks Summer, "Am I jumping to conclusions? Our mother was on a mission to prove Sharon killed Heather." Summer asks what he's saying and exclaims that this is a nightmare. Daniel says Phyllis confronted Sharon multiple times with her accusations. Sharon got caught snooping in their mother's hotel room, and the next thing you know she's been run off the road down the street from Sharon's house. It's all too coincidental. Summer asks if he's saying he thinks Sharon ran their mother off the road. Daniel says it all seems pretty damning to him. Elena joins Summer and Daniel and says their mother will be back from the CT scan shortly. She has an injury involving the brain striking the skull after an impact. There's nothing they can do but watch and wait. At Sharon's place, Faith asks, "What is it?" Sharon announces she has to change her clothes before Chance gets there. She asks Nick to tell Faith what's going on and warns him not to hold back. Sharon leaves the room and Faith starts panicking. She heard there was an accident near there and wants to know why they're waiting for Chance. Just then, Mariah comes in. Faith tells her their mother is super upset about something, and her dad was just about to tell her why. Mariah asks, "Nick, what is it?" Nick sighs, "Your mother just confessed to killing Heather." Mariah and Faith don't believe it. Nick says Sharon's description of that evening is frighteningly detailed. She's having problems with her meds and blackouts. She doesn't think she knew what she was doing. Faith cries, "Oh my God, that's why you called Chance. Mom is going to turn herself in, isn't she?" Mariah gulps, "What?" Faith cries that there's no way her mom killed anyone. She thinks her mom has been led to feel paranoid and delusional. This was all Phyllis' fault. At the Abbott manse, Jack tells Diane worries she caused permanent damage with their son. He said some really hurtful things to her. Jack says he said those things in the heat of the moment. He doesn't believe he feels that way. Diane says his anger toward her is right under the surface. She's sad about how wounded he still is. Jack knows this was painful to listen to, but they forced him to that point for a reason. Diane worries about the arguments they had. It felt real. Jack assures her he has no hidden resentment. He's sorry for any pain he caused, he just wanted to be convincing. Diane fears they were too convincing and lost Kyle anyway. At the club bar, Claire can't believe Kyle's parents went to those lengths to make a point about her grandfather. Kyle feels completely blindsided and numb. He asks what Claire thinks and how she feels about learning that her grandfather is a spiteful, vengeful man. Claire says his ruthlessness in business and his rivalry with Jack have been well documented, but she's not part of this. The only thing that matters is how he feels about it all. Can he accept that his parents did this all for him? Kyle says working with Victor was a colossal mistake, but his problems with his parents started way before that, so he's nowhere near ready to forgive how they treated him. Claire suggests the anger is a lot to carry around. Maybe it's time to let go of the resentment. At the Abbott mansion, Jack thinks Kyle will come around. He's starting to see Victor used him, and they had no other way to convince him. It won't erase the anger he felt before Victor pulled him in. They'll have to repair that damage too. Diane shrugs that at least he's no longer under Victor's control. They talk about how much they hated being apart. Jack tells Diane he loves her more now than the day he married her. They kiss. In the hospital, Summer and Daniel appeal to Phyllis to pull through. She's a fearless fighter who always beats the odds. "We love you," Daniel adds, "and we need you. I can't deal with another loss. We are not going to bury someone else that we love." At Sharon's place, Faith rants that Phyllis pushed Sharon too far. Nick says they're not going to point fingers right now, especially with Phyllis in the hospital. Chance arrives and asks Nick why he's not at the hospital. Sharon appears and Faith runs over to cry and hug her. Sharon tells her daughter that she's sorry to say that it's all true. Chance asks what the hell is going on. Sharon says, "Phyllis was right, Daniel is innocent. I framed him. It was all me. The DA needs to drop the charges against him immediately, and you need to arrest me for the murder of Heather Stevens."